I still remember that rainy Tuesday afternoon when I discovered the truth that would shatter my 8-year marriage. What started as a routine check of our shared tablet for a recipe turned into finding dozens of explicit messages between my wife Natalie and my cousin Jake, the same cousin whose wife Amanda was one of my favorite people in our extended family. I never imagined I would end up divorced and finding love with Amanda after our spouses betrayed us. Before I tell you how this twisted story unfolded, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. And if you have ever had your trust completely broken, hit that like button and subscribe to join others who have turned their pain into power. My name is Ryan, a 35-year-old business owner from Chicago. I run a successful digital marketing agency that I built from scratch over the past decade, which has afforded me a comfortable lifestyle in one of the northern suburbs. I take pride in what I have accomplished professionally, but until recently, I was equally proud of my personal life and the strong marriage I thought I had built with Natalie. We met at my college roommate's wedding 10 years ago. Natalie was a bridesmaid, and I was a groomsman. The typical wedding party setup, but there was nothing typical about our connection. She was stunning in her burgundy dress, but it was her sharp wit and infectious laugh that truly captivated me. By the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers and made plans for dinner the following weekend. Our relationship progressed naturally and happily. We dated for 2 years before I proposed during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. The wedding was everything we wanted, intimate yet joyful, with about 100 of our closest friends and family. For the next 8 years, we built what I thought was a strong marriage. We traveled extensively, supported each other's career ambitions, and were discussing starting a family within the next year. Jake, my cousin, on my mother's side, had always been more like a brother to me. Only 3 years apart in age, we had grown up together, spending summers at our grandparents' lake house and remaining close through college and beyond. When he married Amanda 6 years ago, our families became even more intertwined. The 4 of us would get together at least twice a month for dinner, game nights, or weekend trips to Michigan. Amanda was thoughtful and warm, with a creative passion for photography that complemented Jake's more analytical personality as an accountant. The first signs that something was off began about a year ago. Natalie started working later than usual at her advertising firm. Not dramatically so, but enough that I noticed our dinner time gradually shifting from 6:30 to 7:30, then to 8. She became increasingly protective of her phone, taking it with her even for quick trips to the bathroom. And I occasionally caught her smiling at text messages, but quickly putting the phone away when I entered the room. Initially, I dismissed these changes as work, stress, or perhaps just the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. We had been married for nearly 8 years at that point, and I told myself that some degree of routine and distance was normal. Still, there was an uneasiness that I could not shake, a subtle shift in our connection that felt wrong. The situation came to a head when I had to go to New York for a 4-day business conference. Natalie had opted not to join me, citing a major project deadline at work. 2 days into the trip, my meetings wrapped up earlier than expected, and I decided to fly home that evening to surprise her. I texted my assistant to change my flight, but did not mention it to Natalie, thinking it would be nice to surprise her with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. When my Uber pulled up to our house at around 8:30 that evening, I was surprised to find it dark and Natalie's car gone. I checked the location-sharing app we had set up years ago for safety, something we rarely use but had never disabled. Her location showed she was at Jake and Amanda's house about 20 minutes away. This seemed odd, as I knew Amanda was visiting her parents in Minnesota that week, a trip she had mentioned at our last family dinner. I called Natalie, trying to sound casual, as I asked what she was up to. She answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear background noise that she quickly muffled. She told me she was working late at the office and would be home in about an hour. The lie sent a cold wave through my body. I asked if she was sure she was not somewhere else, and her momentary silence spoke volumes before she doubled down on her story. After hanging up, I sat in our dark kitchen for nearly 40 minutes debating what to do. Part of me wanted to drive to Jake's house and confront them both, but another part feared what I might find. Eventually, I decided to wait and gather more information before making accusations that could damage relationships irreparably if I was somehow mistaken. When Natalie arrived home just after 10, She seemed startled to find me there. She quickly composed herself, claiming she had gone for a quick dinner with coworkers after work and forgot to update her location app. When I mentioned that her location showed she was at Jake's house, she fumbled through an explanation about stopping by briefly to pick up a book Amanda had promised to lend her. The way she avoided eye contact and busied herself with unpacking her bag told me she was lying, but without concrete proof. I reluctantly let it go for the moment. Over the next 2 weeks, I paid closer attention to patterns. Natalie and Jake had always been friendly, but looking back with new suspicion, I noticed how their inside jokes had increased over the past few months. How they always seemed to end up in deep conversation at family gatherings. How Jake would find reasons to touch her arm or shoulder when talking, lingering just a moment too long. I also noticed that Natalie had been using our shared tablet less frequently, preferring her password-protected phone for most communications. One evening, while she was in the shower, I checked the tablet, which still had her email account logged in. There were no suspicious messages there, but when I opened the messaging app, I found what I had been dreading yet somehow expecting. The messages between Natalie and Jake went back 7 months. They started innocently enough discussions about a birthday gift for Amanda that evolved into increasingly personal conversations. Then, flirtatious comments. Eventually, explicit messages and photos that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. They had been meeting at his house when Amanda traveled for her photography business, at hotels during their lunch breaks, once even in our bed when I was working late. I felt physically ill reading through their exchanges, but forced myself to continue taking screenshots and emailing them to myself as evidence. The level of betrayal was staggering. Not just the physical affair, but the emotional intimacy they had developed. The way they discussed their spouses, analyzing our shortcomings and flaws. Jake complained that Amanda was too focused on her career and not exciting enough. Natalie suggested I was predictable and too absorbed in my business to notice her needs. Rather than confronting Natalie immediately, I decided to gather more evidence and plan my approach carefully. I installed a discreet tracking app on her phone under the guise of helping her find it when misplaced. I checked credit card statements, finding charges for hotels on days she claimed to be working late. I even hired a private investigator who provided photos of them entering and leaving a downtown hotel together, holding hands when they thought no one was watching. Armed with undeniable evidence, I considered my next steps. My mother was hosting a family dinner that weekend to celebrate my parents' anniversary. Jake and Amanda would be there, along with other extended family. I decided this would be the moment to confront them both, though I struggled with whether to do it publicly or privately. The dinner was excruciating. Watching Natalie laugh and chat with my parents while occasionally exchanging knowing glances with Jake made my blood boil. Amanda, sweet and completely unaware, kept trying to engage me in conversation about an upcoming charity event she was photographing. I could barely respond, knowing how completely she was being deceived by the two people we had trusted most. After the main course, I asked Jake to help me select a wine from my parents' cellar for dessert. Once we were alone in the basement, I confronted him directly. I will never forget the look on his face when I calmly stated that I knew about his affair with my wife. First shock, then denial, followed by a pathetic attempt to minimize what had happened. He stammered that it was just a few times, that it did not mean anything. When I showed him the screenshots of their messages and the photos from the investigator, his face drained of color. He switched tactics, begging me not to tell Amanda, claiming they could end it quietly and no one would get hurt. His selfishness, in that moment, his concern only for the consequences he would face rather than the pain he had caused, cemented my decision. I walked back upstairs with Jake trailing behind me, visibly shaken. Without raising my voice, I asked for everyone's attention. The room quieted as I stood at the head of the table, Natalie looking confused until she noticed Jake's expression. I announced calmly that I had recently made an interesting discovery that I wanted to share with the family, particularly with Amanda. I connected my phone to my parents' TV using their streaming device and displayed several of the text exchanges and photos. The room fell completely silent. Natalie covered her face with her hands. Jake attempted to approach Amanda, who recoiled from his touch. My mother gasped while my father placed a supportive hand on my shoulder. Natalie finally broke the silence with sobbing apologies, claiming she never meant to hurt me, that she had been confused about her feelings. Jake attempted to paint their relationship as something meaningful rather than the tawdry affair it was. Amanda sat completely still, tears streaming down her face, before suddenly standing and walking out the front door without a word. The family dinner devolved into chaos after that. Some relatives tried to suggest that private matters should remain private. Others took clear sides, my Aunt Paula, notably slapping Jake across the face before following Amanda outside. Natalie pleaded with me to discuss this at home, but I informed her coldly that I would be staying at a hotel and she should expect contact from my lawyer. The next week passed in a blur of logistics and legal consultations. I moved into a hotel temporarily while beginning divorce proceedings. I blocked Natalie's number, after dozens of pleading calls and texts. Various family members reached out, some offering support, others suggesting forgiveness or reconciliation. I ignored most of them, focusing instead on protecting myself legally and emotionally from further damage. 10 days after the family dinner revelation, Amanda contacted me asking if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, curious about how she was coping and feeling a strange kinship with the only other person who truly understood what I was going through. We met at a quiet cafe far from our usual neighborhoods, both of us looking like we had aged years in just days. Our conversation started awkwardly but quickly deepened. Amanda revealed that after investigating further, she had discovered Jake had cheated multiple times throughout their marriage. A colleague at his accounting firm, a client, even one of her friends from photography class. She had been completely blindsided, believing they had a solid marriage despite some normal challenges. I shared the details of my own investigation, the evidence I had gathered, and my decision to file for divorce immediately. I had hired Catherine Chen, a divorce attorney known for her aggressive approach, particularly in cases involving infidelity. Amanda had also consulted an attorney, but was still processing whether to attempt reconciliation or move forward with divorce. As we talked, I found myself appreciating Amanda's perspective and resilience. Despite her pain, she maintained a dignity that I admired. We ended up sitting in that cafe for over 4 hours, moving from the raw details of our spouse's betrayal to deeper conversations about trust, love, and what we wanted for our futures. Over the next few weeks, as my divorce proceedings moved forward, Amanda and I began texting regularly, checking in on each other's emotional state and sharing updates on our situations. Natalie had moved in with a friend and was alternating between begging for another chance and accusing me of overreacting to what she now characterized as just a physical relationship that meant nothing. Her attempts to minimize the affair only strengthened my resolve to end our marriage. Jake, meanwhile, had shifted from apologetic to hostile. He called me repeatedly, leaving threatening voicemails about how I had ruined his life by exposing the affair. He claimed that Amanda was refusing marriage counseling because of my influence, apparently unable to recognize that his own actions had destroyed his marriage. About 2 months after our first coffee meeting, Amanda and I met for dinner. What started as another support session evolved into something that felt remarkably like a date. We talked about our lives before our marriages, our hopes for the future, and for the first time since the revelations, we both laughed genuinely. When I drove her home, there was a moment of tension in the car, a recognition that our relationship was shifting into something neither of us had anticipated. My mother called the next day, having heard from another relative that I had been seen with Amanda. She was concerned about appearances and the complications of dating my cousin's soon-to-be ex-wife. I listened to her perspective, but ultimately told her that at 35, I did not need permission to find comfort and connection where I could. The family had not been particularly concerned about appearances when they had pressured me to forgive Natalie to maintain family harmony. A week later, Amanda and I went to a movie, our first official acknowledgement that we were dating, rather than just supporting each other through divorce. We ran into Natalie at the theater, who created a scene accusing us of having an affair behind her back, apparently missing the irony of her accusation. The confrontation was uncomfortable but also clarifying. I realized I did not owe Natalie or anyone else an explanation for finding happiness after the devastation she had caused. Jake found out about our relationship through family gossip and confronted me outside my office one evening. His anger seemed fueled more by possessiveness than any genuine care for Amanda, as he alternated between calling her terrible names and demanding I stop seeing her because she was still technically his wife. The hypocrisy was staggering. I remained calm but made it clear that his opinion was irrelevant to my life choices moving forward. As our relationship developed, Amanda and I faced significant pressure from various family members. Some thought we were just using each other for revenge. Others were uncomfortable with the connection, finding it too intertwined with the painful history. A few supported us, recognizing that something genuine had grown from shared trauma. After much discussion, we decided that our happiness mattered more than others' discomfort with our unconventional story. My divorce was finalized 6 months after discovery, with Natalie ultimately agreeing to a settlement after her attempts to delay the process proved futile. Amanda's divorce took longer due to financial complications, but we maintained our relationship throughout the process, growing closer as we supported each other through the legal and emotional challenges. It has been just over a year since that rainy Tuesday when I discovered the messages that changed everything. Amanda and I now live together in a new home, in a different suburb, far from our previous lives. My business has expanded to include a branch in Detroit, allowing me to travel frequently and distance myself from the gossip and judgment that still occasionally surfaces in family circles. Natalie and Jake attempted a relationship after both divorces were filed, but without the thrill of secrecy and forbidden connection, they quickly discovered they had little in common. According to mutual friends, they split acrimoniously after only 3 months, each blaming the other for the destruction of their marriages and reputations. Building trust with Amanda has been a journey for both of us. We both brought deep wounds and insecurities to our relationship, but we committed to radical honesty from the beginning. No passcode-protected phones. Open discussions about our fears and triggers. Regular check-ins about boundaries and expectations. Slowly, the hypervigilance and suspicion that characterized the early months have given way to a trusting partnership that feels more secure than anything I experienced in my marriage. My relationship with extended family remains complicated. Some have come around after seeing the authentic connection between Amanda and me. Others maintain a polite distance, uncomfortable with the circumstances of our relationship. My parents, after initial reservations, have welcomed Amanda into their lives, recognizing that their son is genuinely happy for the first time since the devastating revelations. We have built a new social circle separate from family connections, friends who know our story but did not live through it and therefore do not carry the baggage of divided loyalties. These relationships have been refreshing, allowing us to be defined by who we are now, rather than by the betrayal that initially brought us together. Last month, I proposed to Amanda during a weekend trip to Sedona. Unlike my elaborate proposal to Natalie years ago, this one was simple and private, a quiet moment between two people who have seen each other at their most vulnerable and chose each other anyway. She said yes through tears, and we are planning a small destination wedding next spring with only our closest supporters present. The irony is not lost on me that the greatest betrayal of my life led me to my truest partnership. Had Natalie and Jake not chosen to deceive us, Amanda and I might have continued indefinitely as friendly in-laws, never discovering the deep compatibility and understanding we now share. This is not to suggest I am grateful for the affair. The pain was too significant for such sentiment, but I have come to appreciate the unexpected path my life has taken. I have learned that loyalty cannot be assumed based on titles or length of relationships. That betrayal can come from those we trust most completely, but also that beauty can emerge from destruction when we remain open to possibility rather than closing ourselves off from connection out of fear. Amanda and I know that our story raises eyebrows. We know some will always view our relationship through the lens of the scandal that preceded it, but we have stopped allowing others' perceptions to dictate our choices. We are writing our own story now, one based on honesty, respect, and the deep understanding that can only come from walking through fire and emerging together on the other side. Has betrayal ever led you to an unexpected blessing in disguise? Share your story in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming betrayal and finding happiness in unexpected places. Do not forget to share this video with someone who might be struggling to see the light after experiencing similar pain. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember that sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of a better story.